Across the country, Republicans are passing or attempting to pass bills that will wildly and in a number of different ways cut back on voting rights. Arizona is one of the big spots that they're targeting, particularly because of what happened in the 2020 election. Now, generally, Republicans, when attempting to do this, will pretend that it's all about concerns about voter fraud. They usually are pretty disciplined about sticking to that message, but sometimes they do a bit more to reveal what it's really about. And we got a great example of that with Arizona State Representative John Kavanaugh, who said Democrats are willing to risk fraud by expanding voter access, and Republicans are more concerned about fraud. So we don't mind putting security measures in that won't let everybody vote, but everybody shouldn't be voting. And that's where the narrative starts to break apart a little bit. He goes on to say quantity is important, but we have to look at the quality of votes as well. And there, he doesn't mean fraud. He's not talking about them being low quality because of fraud. He's talking about the people doing the voting. He suggested that Democrats' voter registration and ballot collection drives can greatly influence the outcome of the election by targeting uninformed voters. Again, not by producing fraud, but by bringing people in that he doesn't want voting. And he says, I believe that everyone legally qualified to vote should vote. However, which is amazing, I recognize that some people are not interested in public policy and do not follow the issues. So they are by choice uninterested and uninformed. I believe they should be left alone until they decide they want to vote.
Yeah, so guys, you know who doesn't want more people to vote? The side that knows that more people are on the other side. Okay, if you thought you had a winning political strategy and that people really loved the right wing in this country, you'd want as many people to vote as possible. The very last thing you'd want to do is limit voting. You want to limit voting if you think the other guys are going to win. And I mean, the guy literally said everybody shouldn't be voting. No, I told you there. I said it before January 6th. I said it before the election. The Republicans care more about power than they care about democracy. To them, democracy is a tool or a weapon to get to their goal of power. And usually, historically, it has been power over the rest of us and subjugation. And so if they can't subjugate us, they're not interested in democracy. It was just a marketing gimmick. And now they're exposing themselves. 250 bills across the country saying, we limit voting, don't let people vote, don't let people vote. So Republicans are clearly the party against democracy. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And I'm gonna go to my usual point here because it's so important. The press plays it as voter fraud versus voter suppression if we're lucky, and we can't tell. Well, there are no cases of voter fraud. But whereas this would across the country suppress millions of people's votes. So if the press was honest, they would say Republicans do anti-democratic measures against democracy, and they would explain there is very clear there is no voter fraud. There's almost no case of it, and in recent memory, almost every single person that committed voter fraud was a Republican. We've shown you dozens of cases. Trump supporters voting for Trump twice. A whole election got redone in North Carolina because it turns out the Republican campaign itself had done voter fraud. Okay, other than Republican examples, you almost can't find one in America out of hundreds of millions of votes. So this is not 50-50. There's one party who hates our democracy, and it's the Republican Party. People call me radical for saying that. The reality is, it's just a fact. And so I think it's radical not to say it. It's a weird radical protection racket of the Republican Party not to point it out.
Absolutely, and the other thing that Fox News and a lot of right wingers have been pivoting from saying we're a democracy to a republic. Now, like, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Well, okay, we're a democratic republic, guys. You're just being stupidly semantic with this, but suddenly, we're a republic. It's almost as if they're saying, no. White landowning men are the only ones who are really supposed to vote. And yes, that property was often other people. But anyway, and like just say what you mean. But it's scholars of democracy, and this is why I think like leftists and progressives have to actually reclaim the word democracy, small d democracy, not Democrats, right? Like that we actually have to fight for this because Republicans are running away from it and trying to convince their base that no, minority rule is good. It's your God-given right. Oh, maybe it's your race right. It's getting vile, and we should be pointing out that they're not even interested in democracy anymore.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is that while I think what you saw from Kavanaugh there is a little bit more honest than we just care about voting fraud, which is why we want to end voting at 8 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. That sort of BS. It's so clearly fake. This is also a lie. They're not remotely interested in how engaged or intelligent the voters are. First of all, it doesn't matter if you don't know anything. The average American knows very little. Like, have you talked to people? They don't know much. They're still allowed to vote. That's how democracy works. It's not like you get extra votes if you went to grad school or whatever. But if that was actually their concern, that he just wants people who are deeply invested in public policy, what would you say based on the last week? If you were watching the biggest right-wing news channel, in fact, the biggest news channel, what are the most important issues of public policy going on that their voters are so invested in?
Taylor
Dr.
Lorenz.
Seuss, the Muppets, Taylor Lorenz, how pregnant women in the military are a disgrace. Oh yeah, their side is really concerned with public policy. Tell me more about how Hillary Clinton eats babies and they offer up children to Satan. How many millions of Republican voters think that's the only thing you need to know about politics? He doesn't care about that. They don't care about that. It's so fake.
Look, media, just for God's sake, be honest. Be honest in the headlines, be honest in the context of the story. So the Republicans are now brazenly admitting that they hate democracy. The Arizona Republican Party attorney in the Supreme Court said that allowing more people to vote, quote, puts us at a competitive disadvantage relative to Democrats. In front of the Supreme Court, they said, in essence, democracy puts the Republican Party at a disadvantage. Okay, well, I mean, when they say they're against democracy, believe them.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.